Welcome to the free audiobook version of The Everyday Pain Guide, your go-to guide when pain first strikes. Hi, I'm Dr. Ya-Ling Liu, and the podcast is taking a little detour to make my new book available in an audio-friendly version for everyone out there. Each episode will feature a bite-sized snippet from the book, and together we'll work our way through as much of it as is possible in this format. What's exciting about this is that I'm reading parts of the book to you before it's even available on the shelves. Plus, unlike with a traditional audiobook, you can engage with the content and chat with me about what you hear. You get to ask questions and tell me what you think as each episode rolls out. So sit back and relax as I bring you today's installment of the second book in the Everyday Pain Guide series, Fix the Fire Damage. In the last episode, we started the reinforce phase of action by looking at how we can acknowledge and support elimination of potentially pain-causing cellular waste through the colon. Today, we'll continue by examining briefly the avenues of elimination through the bladder and the skin. The information, techniques, and suggestions discussed here are not intended as a substitute for your own medical care. Always consult a healthcare provider before implementing any advice referenced here. How to reinforce elimination through the bladder. The most obvious way to support the movement of fluids through your body is to hydrate, drinking water. When you drink water, it doesn't just pass through a series of hollow tubes to land with a splash inside the bladder. Up to 70% of your body is water. And when you add water to the already fluid-driven system, you create hydraulic pressure that pushes fluid through your tissues and cells, not unlike saturating a sponge. Some of what you drink provides assistance to the removal of your solid waste, but most of it goes towards washing out all of your insides, providing transport for nutrients and waste, as well as plumping up your cells. Think of how a houseplant visibly perks up if it's slightly wilted but then receives some water. Some of the water seeps out through the bottom of the pot, but a lot of it gets pushed through the stems into the leaves, creating a much more vital-looking plant. Fluids have a way of reaching all the tissues of the body given enough time. But physical movement accelerates that process and makes it more efficient. When you move your body, it's a bit like squeezing a sponge under a stream of water. By making that sponge move, you facilitate the movement of fluids into and through the sponge a bit more efficiently than if you just poured water onto a dry sponge and waited for it to become saturated. Just like with our stool, if we deny ourselves the ability to empty the bladder because the moment isn't right, or if we get distracted, the need seems to pass. When we do this habitually, then we also change the sensitivity of the pressure or stretch receptors associated with the bladder wall. The reflex that allows the bladder to empty is also linked with the autonomic nervous system. This means there needs to be a certain degree of relaxation and feeling of safety in order for the emptying reflex to function properly. Some people have what's clinically recognized as shy bladder syndrome. And if you have that, you know how difficult it can be to urinate in public bathrooms, even when the bladder is brimming and those stretch receptors are screaming. If you talk to urologists, you'll hear that a general rule of thumb is to think of emptying your bladder every 2 to 4 hours, even if you don't have an urgent need. This is to account for the fact that with aging, we can lose sensitivity in those stretch receptors in addition to the desensitization that happens with habitually delaying bladder emptying. Additionally, if you can count to 10 or more while voiding, then you are likely hydrating sufficiently. If the duration of your urine stream is less than a count of 8, then you might be trying to void too often, or you might be somewhat underhydrated. If you consistently count to more than 10 from start to finish, you may just be hydrating enthusiastically. But if not, and if your volume urine seems high and frequent and colorless, it's worth mentioning to your physician. Some metabolic disorders can cause large volumes of urine out of proportion with fluid intake. For more about what the different colors of urine indicate, there are numerous resources that you can turn to online. How to reinforce elimination through the skin. Sweating is the main vehicle of elimination through your skin, but the function of sweating is primarily as a way to regulate body temperature and not as a way to detoxify. You might recall from an earlier section that there's a comparable amount of urea found in sweat to that found in urine. So it's easy to think of sweat like the urine of your skin, but the other three exits do more of the heavy lifting when it comes to garbage elimination. To optimize elimination through the skin, exfoliation, blood flow, and lymph flow can be helpful factors. Sweating is a side effect of an increase in circulation and thermal changes, which means it's possible that the elimination benefits of sweating are actually due to the simultaneous increase in blood and lymph flow, carrying greater volumes of garbage out of the body to the other three exits. Cardiovascular exercise and dry saunas are two healthy ways to trigger sweat production, accompanied by increased circulation of fluids. Exfoliation, the shedding of skin cells, is a natural and ongoing process that helps to keep the skin pores clear for easy transport across the skin barrier. Constant regular perspiration can cause blocked skin pores, but the minerals in our sweat act as natural exfoliants, so moderate amounts of sweat paradoxically help maintain open pores. Before deciding to use commercial exfoliants, discuss it with your dermatologist for advice that is specific to your individual skin's needs. As with all skin products, be mindful of the possible sneaky three garbage burdens that might impact your air or soaps and lotions journeys. Blood flow transports garbage items to and from the skin layer. Optimal blood flow depends heavily on hydration and the pumping action provided by body movement, in addition to your overall cardiovascular health, with the heart acting as the mechanical engine that powers the flow of blood. Remember that starting your day with 20 minutes of cardiovascular exercise is already recommended practice in conjunction with the strategy for the release of caffeine. Lymph flow, which is the movement of fluids that bathe all of our cells, is also a vital element to elimination through the skin. The research is scant on this, but the practice of dry skin brushing has been used to enhance circulation, and specifically the movement of lymph fluid. Skin brushing is a gentle daily practice before showering with a natural bristle brush or a dry washcloth, and applied with a light circular motion on the skin. Because lymph vessels aren't as muscular as blood vessels, and the lymph is not directly connected to the heart, there isn't the same pressurized pulsation available to push fluids around the body. So the movement of lymph relies more heavily on hydraulic pressure and body movement for transport. There's also a gentle form of body work called manual lymphatic drainage, MLD, that can address lymph flow. After surgical procedures involving the removal of lymph nodes, a doctor may recommend MLD treatments by specially trained manual therapists to help manage the transport of fluids in the newly compromised area. That completes the second of 3 episodes detailing the third phase of action, reinforce, as part of the Body Chemistry Action Plan from Volume 2 of the Everyday Pain Guide series, Fix the Fire Damage. Today, I want to know from you, do you have a strategy for staying hydrated? Please come and share that with the rest of us in the Better Pain Coping community over on Substack. If you haven't already used the free link in the show notes, please do, and I hope to see you chime in over there. It's where you can access some of the bonus book material. Plus, you can see some of my videos where I weigh in on all sorts of things related and random. I also do my best to answer as many questions as I can. In the next episode, we finish up this third phase of action by exploring the ins and outs of elimination through the airway. See what I did there? Ins and outs? All right. See you then. This episode was an excerpt from The Everyday Pain Guide, your go-to guide when pain first strikes. Written and narrated by me, Dr. Ya-Ling Liu, with audio editing and production provided by Organized Sound Productions. Do you have questions or comments about today's episode? You can shoot me an email anytime at hello@stopeverydaypain.com. That's HELLO@stopeverydaypain.com. If you have friends or family members who you know are struggling with persistent, recurring aches and pains, tell them to check out the podcast while they're waiting for the book. To help me get this information to as many people who need it as possible, please consider leaving an honest review, but I'd also be super grateful for a simple like, follow, or share. Thank you for helping me put a stop to everyday pain.